Good morning. I'm going to take a little drink here before I get started because I'm still working on my throat here for the last couple of months. Seems this is getting to be a broken record that I'm telling you guys about my difficulties and so forth. If you'll indulge me, I'd like to start the morning with a chant to center us, based on Hindu and Buddhism tradition of opening and closing a service with the chant of Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. The word Shanti is about peace. Om, for those of you who don't know, that is essentially the allness of spirit, of God, or what have you. So if you'd like to participate, just, sit up straight in your chair, your back away from the back of the chair, feet on the floor, arms on your lap, or, on like this, however you want to do it. And you heard the words already, right? So it's just Om and then Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Ready? Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Thank you. In different aspects of those traditions, the three Shantis are related to looking to have peace in your mind and heart, peace in the physical world around you, and peace in terms of the obstacles and apprehensions in your day-to-day existence. But there are different interpretations of what those three mean, but essentially that's what it's all about. So this time of year, it seems like we're always seeing or hearing the word peace because of the holidays and the season itself. And I think probably over the years, because things have gotten less politically correct because of all the different aspects, we don't even say as often as we used to, Merry Christmas, but sometimes peace is what you see on the Christmas cards. We hear it in the Christmas Carol, Happy Holidays, peace, that kind of thing, more generic and secular sounding. And I've been to 2 Catholic funerals in the last 3 weeks, 1 week in between them, where I'm very impressed with their greeting time in the service, where they stand up and they say to each other, peace be with you. And so I've seemingly had quite an exposure to the word peace in preparation for the talk today because of the season. I think of the season also every year in terms of peace. I don't know of those of you who know Jean Keller. I think this lady down here probably knows Jean Keller from El Paso, who's a singer-songwriter that comes quite often to the Howling Coyote Coffee House. And every year, Jean writes a new song in honor of Christmas. And one that he sang a number of years ago has always stuck with me, where the title of the song was, "Well, I didn't get world peace for Christmas again this year." And so I think about that every year, that we still don't have world peace, and yet there is seemingly a calling for it, a cry for it, a desire for it. But for whatever reasons, it doesn't seem to be showing up at Christmas time or any time as of yet. But speaking of songs, in the past, here and at Wellspring, still to this day, they close the service with what we call the peace song. And a number of years back here at this center, when I was involved here, my Oasis teaching chapter is a different center. It's not one of the 3 churches that they were mentioning this morning in the talk, in the announcements. But we changed the words of the peace song, which were originally written as, "Let there be peace on earth and let it begin with me." And we put it into a more affirmative form when we were singing it here, that now there is peace on earth and it has begun with me. So to me, this is the whole crux of how we're going to get to world peace, is it's my job to get it and your job to get it. That individually, we have to embody peace in order to manifest peace in ourselves and the larger community and the world outside the planet, the universe and beyond, as they say in Star Trek, right? That it begins inside, it begins with me. It has begun with me. It now begins with me and with you. That each of us has our part to do in achieving some sort of inner peace that can then reflect as outer peace. So it begins right here. I call this the demilitarized zone, the 6 inches between my ears, where my mind is there for transformation, to see and believe differently, and to understand how my interpretation of things is affecting my level of inner peace. And I've talked to you in the last couple of months about some things that I've referred to are going on in my life that I've had a real challenge around getting to peace. So I think I'm well qualified to stand up here today and talk to you about what a tough job it is and how my understanding of your all situation is much, much probably more enhanced by all of that. So the title of my talk today is Be Peace. I understood that it was be a channel for peace in the theme, but being peace is the way to be the change in the world we wish to see, to become that feeling, that emotion, that science principle that we want to manifest is the way to set that example and to create the consciousness level that lifts the entire consciousness of the planet. Do you believe that if you change, you can change the world? Good, we're in the right room. That's good. So one of the things when I thought about the peace being the channel for peace earlier in the month was this book that I have that Reverend Sandy Scott, my minister, gave me. It's called Being Peace by Thich Nhat Hanh. Anyone unfamiliar with who he is? Okay. Well, Thich Nhat Hanh is a Buddhist monk he's a Vietnamese monk who brought to the United States a form of Buddhism and is transforming that into a more American type of flavor of Buddhism. But his Buddhist teachings were born out of the war in Vietnam, at the time of the war in Vietnam, and he was able to, get out. And he's been in the U.S. and France and other places. He's almost 90 now, I think. So I saw something on some prayer request for him not too long ago. I don't know if any of the rest of you got it or not, that I guess he may not be in the best of health. But Doug was mentioning earlier in his invocation prayer about the wonder of having children in the midst of the center here again. And one of the things that I read in this book about being peace is the 16 principles that they operate by, that they call, compassion trainings. And he talks about at the beginning of their service each week, the children recite 2 of them with the larger group before they're allowed to go out and play. And those 2 are related to the idea of understanding love and compassion for all people, all animals, all plants, and all minerals. To learn to love and to live with them in peace. And I'm thinking, what a wonderful opportunity for the kids here. See how if they start this compassion training at such an early age, how much easier hopefully it would be to have the consciousness of peace be embodied in the child at such a younger age. Because I don't know about you, but I was a pretty evil kid. To my siblings, I am still the oldest of 4, and I was pretty nasty to one of my younger sisters for sure. So I think I could have benefited maybe from learning some of that compassion training at an earlier age, perhaps. I don't know, but that gives them a respect and a desire for maintenance of peace and love and the planet in all levels. From the mineral kingdom to the human race, everything is included there, so that they have a love and respect for everything. So where does peace actually come from? How do you get to inner peace? In your own demilitarized zone. If we create the demilitarized zone where we stop nagging on ourselves for a while and stop that monkey mind chatter for a little bit so that we can allow something else to come in, how do we get there? How does it happen? That's the thing that I think is the challenge for all of us. So first I'd like you to stop and think about something that you would want in your life. It could be, a new car or $50,000 or, whatever you've been thinking about that you want, or maybe what you're wanting to do for your New Year's resolutions, something that you want. If you'd think about that, hold that in your mind for a second, and then I want to ask you a question that you'll answer in your mind mentally. Why is it that you want that? Now, if you think about why is it that you want that, what will you have or be when that enters your life? Think about that. Now, why do you want that piece of it? Think about that for a minute. What's that going to do for you? What are you going to be or have as a result of that? And now let's take it to another level. Why do you want that? Where will you be or have at that level when you have that? I'm not going to keep asking the question. I'm hopeful that most all of you in that series of thought-provoking questions reached a level where what you were going to have or be was some level of inner peace, some level of satisfaction. You know, for the example, if I wanted the $50,000, well, why did I want that? Well, maybe I needed to have this or that, or I wanted to give some to my family or whatever. And what was that going to do for me? Well, maybe that was going to give me a sense of love and appreciation that I could show for them by giving them the money. And what would that do for me? You know, you keep taking it back to that level where ultimately almost anything that you want to have, be, or do is related to provoking that opportunity for the outcome to be a sense of inner peace, a satisfaction level that we often have come to believe is only going to happen if and when we get that external thing that we thought we wanted that was going to produce that. And I just open up for the opportunity for you to consider that maybe you could reverse engineer it and start with what it takes to feel the feeling and to practice feeling the feeling of inner peace and quiet, be still. In this moment, I am peace. In this moment, I am new, as we sang earlier. That you could start there. And maybe you don't even have to get that thing, whatever that thing is, at the final analysis of it. But ultimately, the answer becomes the search to the search for inner peace and meaning that comes from that in our lives. So I don't know about you guys, but I want to share with you a little bit about how the great mind works, because when I was finding out about this topic, it was last month when I was here speaking, and Reverend Bonnie said, oh, and the topic for next month is being a channel for peace. And that's all I heard. If she said change, boy, I did not hear the word change at all. But I started out with the decision almost immediately that I would talk about change, because to me, the obstacle in my life, and I think I'm not unique in that regard, to achieving that level of inner peace or being able to practice that feeling of inner peace comes from my willingness, unwillingness, or whatever, which way of the equation you want to be on, to accept and surrender to change. And in our world today, change is coming at the speed of thought, really, truly. You know, when you consider how much change people that were living even 100 years ago were having to contend with or deal with or be exposed to in their external aspects of their lives at any rate. We've accelerated that with such rapidity that it's mind-boggling. And so the change is just rapid fire in our world today. And I just knew that that's what I would speak about. So I was already on the path of deciding about change, and then more change happened in my life. I had a broker in my early real estate career who always was fond of telling us that there was nothing more constant than change. And I always used to add, and except in my pocket. But the idea there is, you know, it's always there. We can't resist it. There's no purpose in resisting it. It's always going to be at us. And nothing changes till you do is one of the things that we talk about in our personal growth and spiritual development movement that we call Science of Mind. And if you want something to be different, you've got to be different, right? We've learned those principles here, or in classes, or in reading books of New Thought or personal growth. And I was recently listening to an interview after being here and deciding that I wanted to talk about change and how we can accept change or how we experience change. And I was listening to an interview on the internet with a guy who, unfortunately, I never got back to the interview to get his name, so I can't tell you who he was, because of the change that happened in my life. I started that, and on the 4th of December, one of my dear friends and longtime real estate colleagues dropped dead of a heart attack. And that was a pretty significant change in my life all of a sudden. Not only was he gone, but I've been helping to run his brokerage since December 5th. Just like suiting up and showing up and going back to work, putting in 12 and 14-hour days, trying to get a handle on what was going on in his world. So I never got back to that interview in the 48 hours it was available to listen to it on the internet for free. But the man had been a tennis player in his, trying to become a professional tennis player, I guess, in his earlier life, and he wasn't doing very well, and he decided to go back to things that he knew better, because he would perform well in practice, and then he would clutch on the court when it was time to actually play. And so in this interview, he talked about what his process is and how he coaches people, primarily athletes still to this day, on how to improve their game, but how to improve their lives. And I liked what he had to say, so I took some notes while I was listening to it on my trusty little technology piece here, and went back to that. But I wanted to visit with you about a couple of things that I thought I learned from there that I wanted to bring into the talk. That what we have going on with the idea of embracing change is what's in that 6 inches between our brain. That we react usually to change, whether it's good or bad, because it's change, whatever it is. It's a shift in our lives. And we usually react with fear. Even if it's something that we think is wonderful, there's still an apprehension about, or uncertainty for the future, as Doug was reading about in the reading this morning, that we're not quite comfortable, and so we're a little bit fearful. And he says we need to take a look at that emotion of fear and look at transforming it into the question of what is the opportunity here? Where do the opportunities lie in whatever this is, whether we perceive it to be good or bad, negative or positive change in our lives, it's nonetheless change, and it's about transforming our experience of it into something where we're looking for the opportunities, even if it's an opportunity for growth. That's what we always say about the stuff that we consider to be bad, right? Well, it's just another opportunity for growth. And it's true. I mean, it doesn't feel like it at the time, but we know from our past experience that it is indeed true. So he talks about our lives are related to, or what we want, achieving what we want, is related to perceiving of two circles. So like circle 1 and circle 2. This is my overhead projector. Oh, circle 1, circle 2. And he says that in circle 1 is everything that you know and the obstacles that are there for achieving what you want. And the second circle is what it is you want. And they're non-tangential, so they don't touch each other and they don't intersect in any fashion. So he says if you spend all your time over in circle 1 looking at what you've done wrong or what the obstacles are to getting how you want to be, then you're focused on that. And what do we know about what we focus on? We get more of it, right? It expands, exactly. So he says you've got to figure out how to let go or drop out of that first circle to get into the circle of the things that it is that what you want. And he had like 5 laws that he said were appropriate for pursuing to get yourself into the second circle. And I wanted to visit with you today about a couple of them. The law of awakening is the first thing that he says will help get you into circle 2, where awakening to what is and who you are and what your true nature and true essence is will allow you to make the right decisions after you've checked in to decide what it is that you really are and want to become. And the second one is actually his 5th, and he calls it the law of misinterpretation. And he says in the interview that about 80% of the time we're misinterpreting what we see, hear, believe, feel. That's kind of a scary number because, I mean, that's what we've created our reality from. There's no reality except mine, and yours is yours, and mine is mine, and we hardly ever have any really shared reality that we could say is objectively there. So if 80% of the time we're misinterpreting what's going on, maybe we could consider the possibility that we're wrong, that we didn't quite get it somehow. And perhaps we should start back at looking at, well, how can I index this? How could I take a look at this from a different perspective? Is there a possibility that I might have misinterpreted something? He didn't talk about it in the interview, but I love Byron Katie's the work on the questions that I believe are invaluable to helping me get beyond this moment where I'm stuck in something, or I'm resisting something, or I'm just so certain it's this way, that we could look at it at a deeper level and say, well, is it true, and how could I know that it's true, and if it weren't true, what would my life be? How would it be without it? You know, the questions that Byron Katie has taught us, and if you're not familiar with her, just, you know, go Google her. It's Katie, Byron is the first name, and the last name is Katie, Katie. So I love those questions that she has. And Thich Nhat Hanh says in here in this book that there are no truths. There are no absolute truths. That's kind of like, you know, almost blasphemous, right? Because we do believe there are some, maybe. But he says, don't believe that there are any. And his attitude would be more like Ernest Holmes, our founder, stay open at the top and always allow for the possibility that something isn't what it seems, that something isn't the way you believe it. I mean, you know, if there weren't some people out there who were iconoclasts or unbelievers, we wouldn't have made any progress in the human race, right? We've been stuck in the cave still. Because it's only through something new coming in that's different from what was believed before that a true beneficial change can occur. And he tells a story in here about a man who had lost his son in a fire in the house. And he was so certain that his son had perished in the house and was just part of the ashes, that at some point when his son came back to the door and found him in the village where he was living after the house had been rebuilt, he knocked on the door, and the father says, who is it? And he said, it's me, your son. And the man refused to open the door because he was still in such grief, and he thought someone was making a joke on him or whatever. But he refused to believe that his son was alive because he couldn't consider the possibility, because he believed so strongly that his truth was that his son was dead. That's the story that Thich Nhat Hanh tells in here. But in November of, not November, but in 2009, I don't know what month it was, this book came out by Neale Donald Walsch, called When Everything Changes, Change Everything. And that's what I knew the title of the book to be then, because I heard him in an interview, you know, the interviews that authors go out when they're stumping their book when it's first coming out. And I heard him on an interview, and I was so taken, I so resonated with the title at that time. You know, think of the year that this was. And for Neale Donald Walsch, it was the year after he'd lost half his retirement in the crash of 2008. And I don't know about you guys, but I certainly lost a lot in 2008. And so when this came along in 2009, I printed it out on a piece of paper, and I hung it up where I would see it. Just the title that I heard him talk about, When Everything Changes, Change Everything. And that became sort of a mantra for me, and still is to a degree. And this week I got the cosmic hit, well, I'm going to talk about change. Maybe I ought to take a look at that book, because I'd never read the book. I mean, I heard the interview, I heard what it was about, and all I took from it was this title, When Everything Changes, Change Everything. And I decided, okay, that's for me, you know. Keep it simple, even if it's not easy, right? So I got the cosmic hit that I should check out the book, so I got on the internet and went to Amazon and saw the book title actually is When Everything Changes, Change Everything, in a Time of Turmoil, A Pathway to Peace. So I thought, okay, God, that's it. I got it. Because here he was connecting the same two dots that I thought I was unique in connecting, not knowing that the theme actually included the idea of change. But I think you wanted people to be a channel for change as a part of the theme. And what I wanted to talk about was how to become a channel for peace through change. Internally. So in this book, what Neale Donald Walsch has, and he's the guy who wrote Conversations with God, if there's any people that don't know about that. And I've also always felt a connection with him too, because he was a student of Reverend Sandy's in the Terry Cole Whitaker Ministries back in the day. So he has a promise in here that if you that you can transform the emotional mindset that you have if you follow the 9 steps for change that he has in the book. And the emotions that he promised, I'm not going to talk forever about the book, but I'm going to just share enough with you so it piques your interest, and maybe you'll go to his website, changingchange.net, which I think is a wonderful title for a website too, because that's what he's all about, is changing how we experience change so that we can get this pathway to peace. The emotions that he talks about in here, that the 9 changes that he suggests will help deliver to you, is that you will be able to turn worry into wonder, expectation into anticipation, resistance into acceptance, disappointment into detachment, enragement into engagement, addiction into preference, requirement into contentment, judgment into observation, sadness into happiness, thought into presence, reaction into response, and a time of turmoil into a time of peace. So I thought that them's pretty high stakes, you know? And here I will read you the 9 steps to change, and I will talk to you a little bit about how I think that they relate to something that Thich Nhat Hanh talks about in here, which is that you move from the inner being to the inter-being. So that it's the inside job first, and then it's the outside job of interacting and inter-being. Those are the words he uses. So Neale Donald Walsch's 9 changes that can change everything. Change your decision to go it alone. Change your choice of your emotions. Change your choice of your thoughts. Change your choice of truths. Change your idea about change itself. Change your idea about why change occurs. Change your idea about future change. Change your idea about life. Change your identity. Now those are definitely simple sounding, but not easy, right? So I believe after looking at this, after having read this book, that Walsch has 9 things there. 1 through 4 are actually about changing your inner being, and then 5 through 8 are more related to that outer aspect of your being, and then you get as a result the outcome of number 9, which is to change your identity. So I'll read these to you again, and you see how you see that they fit. The inner being ones, as I see it, are change your decision to go it alone, change your choice of emotion, change your choice of thought, change your choice of truth. Those are the first 4. So that's about what you're seeing, what you're perceiving, how you're relating to the reality that you're creating, possibly from that 80% of misinterpretation, if you don't rethink it, if you don't re-question it. Then the next 4 are change your idea about change itself. What is it? How does it come to you? Where is it coming from? When he says your idea about how change occurs, or change your idea about the future of change, and change your idea about life. These are all things that I think we see that come to us externally, from the external. In the book, he characterizes change as a shift in one of 3 major areas of your life: relationship, money, and health. I got all 3 of them in 2008 and 9. And I don't know how he did. Walsch's story, for those of you who may not know it, he was in a downward spiral back in the 80s until his last year of just absolute homelessness. He hit bottom. And that's where he began allowing God to speak to him and transcribing what was being spoken, and eventually created and developed this idea of the Conversations with God series, which I highly recommend if anybody in here is interested to pursue them. And so ultimately, he says that if you follow these 9 precepts of change, that then you will reach, and this to me sounds very Buddhist and Hindu too, that you will reach an energy field of such equanimity and harmony with the universe that the universal law of attraction draws even more equanimity and harmony into your life, because you now know that everything that happens is for the best, and then everything happens to you, you're okay with it. The irony is that when everything that happens is okay with you, you're able to set up that field. So it's about getting to surrender, about getting to acceptance, about allowing these changes that he's talking about working through. And in the book, he has, exercises and conversations with you, basically, about how to do it. He wrote Conversations with God. This is Conversations with Neale Donald Walsch, and his experience of how he transformed his life from homelessness into where it is today. So those 9 changes. And he talks about the fear and isolation being our first reaction, much like the anonymous man that I talked to you about, who talked about fear and asking yourself the question, where's the opportunity here? He says the fear and isolation are the things that you need to drop immediately and reach out for others and not decide to go it alone. And I think that's true, that when something really significant or what we perceive to be cataclysmic in our lives happens, we're just kind of like the turtle that shrinks in, pulls his head into the shell, and tries to sit still and just not let anybody bound on us anymore. And he says we really need to have other people in community to help us. That's that inner being to interbeing aspect of the peace that is the being peace. And what we have then, I think, is the opportunity to look at the ultimate transformation that I want to finish up with here as soon as I can figure out where I am here. But I want to consider that the prayer of St. Francis of Assisi is what I'd like to close with, and then ask you also if we could perhaps finish off with the Om Shanti 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 again. To me, the prayer of St. Francis of Assisi is the first thing I think about when someone says channel for peace. And the prayer itself is about transforming your inner being to be involved at the interbeing level. So just take a deep breath and I'll read you the prayer and then we'll finish with Om Shanti Shanti, okay? Lord, make me an instrument of thy peace. Where there is hatred, let me sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. And where there is sadness, joy. O Divine Master, grant that I may not so much seek to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love, for it is in the giving that we receive. It is in the pardoning that we are pardoned. It is in the dying to self that we are born to eternal life. And so it is. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Namaste.